Bury her! Alive!
Help me! Somebody please help me! One day, your own family will beg mine for mercy!
Heavy rain pounds against a steel casket. Mud splatters across the polished mahogany. Under the pale glow of a flickering construction lamp, an African woman lies trapped inside, her breathing shallow, her eyes wide with unadulterated terror. Above the freshly dug pit, a famous Korean billionaire stands under an umbrella. His face is completely devoid of emotion. Cold, unfeeling. The engine of a heavy bulldozer roars to life. A massive mechanical shovel rises, brimming with wet, heavy soil. Inside the casket, her fingers claw desperately at the silk lining. She screams with every ounce of breath remaining in her lungs. One day, your own family will beg mine for mercy. The billionaire doesn't blink. He doesn't even move an inch. He simply turns his back as tons of dark earth cascade downward, smothering the glass viewport. Thud, thud, silence. The soil presses down, crushing all light. Everyone believed that was the last time anyone would hear her voice. But stories told in the dark have a terrible habit of clawing their way into the sunlight. You see, the public narrative was remarkably simple. A tragic accident. An unfortunate foreign consultant lost in a chaotic storm near an unfinished coastal bridge. That's what the news anchors reported with somber, practiced expressions. But let's look closer. Let's peel back the pristine layer of corporate lies. She wasn't kidnapped by random thugs. She hadn't wandered off path. She had been investigating the horrific structural failure of the Namhan Suspension Bridge, a collapse that plunged 300 innocent souls into icy waters 2 years prior. Deep within encrypted company servers, she found the dirty secret. Substandard steel, forged safety permits, millions embezzled into offshore tax havens, and someone high up in the executive tower wanted that damning evidence buried 6 feet deep, right along with her. Now, ask yourself, did she really suffocate beneath that crushing mud? Did her voice truly die in that forgotten grave? Fast forward. 7 years later. Seoul, South Korea. The trading floor of the Uido Financial Center is in utter chaos. Red numbers flash across massive digital screens like open wounds. Telephones ring off the hook. Executives in tailored Italian suits are dripping sweat, frantically screaming into their headsets. In less than 48 hours, 17 major domestic companies, spanning shipping, artificial intelligence, logistics, and heavy manufacturing, have been quietly, surgically bought out. Every single share snatched from the open market before anyone even realized a hostile takeover was underway. And here is the kicker. Every single one of those 17 companies belongs to the legendary Hansung conglomerate. The board of directors gathers in a state of sheer panic. At the head of the polished oak table sits Chairman Kang Min-yi, the very same man who stood under that umbrella 7 years ago, older now but with the same arrogant, razor-sharp eyes. He slams his fist onto the table, shattering a crystal glass. "Who is buying us out?" he roars. His voice shakes the glass walls. "Find them, I want a name, I want a face, now." But his intelligence team has nothing. No paper trail, no public statement. Just a shell corporation registered in Switzerland under an enigmatic, untraceable moniker. AETHEL Real Estate HOLDINGS. Meanwhile, 3 blocks away, inside the quiet, velvet-draped lounge of the Grand Hyatt, a grand piano resides in the corner. The room is dimly lit, smelling faintly of dark roasted espresso and fresh rain. A young man sits at the keys. His hands move across the ivory with breathtaking elegance. This is Noel. He is blind. Dark glasses cover his eyes, but his hearing is sharper than a surgical blade. He doesn't need sight to map the world. He hears the precise weight of every footstep. He reads the exact cadence of a person's heartbeat in the subtle rustle of their clothing. The glass-heavy doors of the lounge swing open. Footsteps echo across the polished marble floor. Click, tap, click, tap. Noel's fingers pause gently above the keys. He tilts his head slightly. The sound of these steps is different from the arrogant sway of rich socialites or the hurried scuffle of hotel waiters. It is light, deliberate, completely measured. A rhythm that carries absolute control, yet hides an agonizing weight beneath every stride. The stranger sits at a small table near the corner window, far away from the bustling crowd. Noel begins to play again. A soft, haunting classical melody fills the air. He senses the stranger's gaze upon him. He turns his head toward her direction and smiles softly. "You carry a very heavy storm inside you, ma'am," he says softly, his voice warm, almost conversational. "Most people walk to arrive somewhere. You walk like you are trying to keep the ground beneath you from falling apart." Stranger does not answer immediately. She simply watches him. Silence stretches between them like a tight wire. Then a low, smooth voice replies, "Sometimes the ground deserves to fall apart." Noel raises an eyebrow, fascinated. He doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know who he is. Neither realizes that their bloodlines are bound by a tragic secret that is about to tear the highest towers of South Korea down to their very foundation. The woman at the table reaches down for her cup of dark tea. She wears an exquisite emerald green silk glove on her right hand. Slowly, with deliberate grace, she slides the glove off. Beneath the fabric, wrapping around her wrist like a thick, cruel bracelet, is a horrific cluster of jagged scars, marks left behind by heavy dirt, jagged wood, and desperation. This is Adesewa. She is alive. But the woman who was buried 7 years ago is dead. The soft-hearted, trusting engineer who believed in justice and fair play suffocated in that wooden box. What emerged from the dirt is an unstoppable force of nature. She gently touches her scarred wrist, her eyes cold as steel as she looks out the window at the distant, shining headquarters of Hansung Group. "Them panic," Adesewa whispers to herself, her voice dangerously calm. "The storm hasn't even hit them yet. If you're enjoying this story so far, subscribe now because every chapter from here changes everything." Across the city, Chairman Kang Min-yi receives his first direct blow. A major shipping subsidiary collapses overnight after a sudden, mysterious audit reveals massive financial irregularities. Media outlets swarm the corporate headquarters like vultures. Min-yi stands at his high-rise window, clutching a glass of scotch, his jaw clenched tight. He isn't terrified yet. No, a man of his stature feels only deep, burning curiosity. Who has the audacity to challenge him? Who dares to strike at the heart of his empire? He takes a sip, his eyes narrowing. "Whoever you are," he mutters, "you have no idea who you're playing with." But oh, how wrong he is. Because Adesewa isn't just playing a game. She is executing an execution. The morning sun breaks over Seoul, but inside the executive suite of Hansung Group, the atmosphere is pitch black. Chairman Kang Min-yi stares at the stock ticker on his terminal. The numbers are plummeting. Red arrows cascade down like a waterfall of blood. His senior vice presidents stand in a nervous semicircle, heads bowed, trembling. $2 billion, Min-yi says softly, his voice terrifyingly quiet. In less than 12 hours, $2 billion of market value vanished. And you tell me you cannot track the short sellers? The head of risk management clears his throat, terrified. "Sir, the trades are coming from hundreds of micro-accounts spread across offshore jurisdictions. It's like fighting a ghost." A ghost? Min-yi smirks, though his knuckles turn white as he grips his desk. Ghosts don't buy corporate debt. Humans do, and humans have motives. Meanwhile, in the quiet, sunlit sanctuary of the St. Teresa Children's Home on the outskirts of the city, a completely different scene unfolds. The air smells of sweet pine and warm milk. Children run across the wooden floorboards, laughing and chasing paper airplanes. In the center of the room, sitting on a low wooden stool, is Adesewa. She is dressed modestly in a beige trench coat, but her hands are covered by those striking emerald gloves. To the administrators and the young orphans, she isn't a ruthless corporate predator buying up billion-dollar conglomerates. She's simply the lady with green gloves, an anonymous benefactor who pays for medicine, books, and winter coats. A little 7-year-old girl named Hana sits near the window, holding a thick charcoal pencil. She scribbles frantically on a large sheet of butcher paper. Adesewa walks over, stepping softly, and kneels beside the child. She watches Hana's hand move. The child isn't drawing flowers or cartoon characters. She is drawing massive geometric structures, soaring steel suspension towers, thick cables spanning across open water, and sharp, jagged fracture lines right through the center of the bridge deck. Adesewa's heart skips a beat. Her breath hitches. "Hana," Adesewa whispers, keeping her voice remarkably gentle. "What are you drawing, sweetheart?" The little girl doesn't stop drawing. She doesn't even look up. "The big bridge," Hana says softly, her voice carrying a strange, unnatural calm. "The one that fell into the dark water. The man in the black suit made it fall." Adesewa freezes. Every nerve ending in her body lights up with alarm. Hana was born right here in this orphanage 7 years ago. She has been blind in her left eye since birth, and she has never left the sanctuary grounds. She has never seen a suspension bridge in her entire life. How could a child who has never seen the sea draw the precise structural failure of the Namhan Bridge? Adesewa reaches out, her gloved fingers trembling slightly as she touches the edge of the drawing. "Who told you about the man in the black suit, Hana?" Hana finally stops her pencil. She turns her pale, soft face toward Adesewa. "I hear him in my dreams," the child whispers. "He says, 'Put her in the ground before she speaks.' And then I hear a lady crying." A cold spike of electricity shoots down Adesewa's spine. A secret long-thought dead rattles inside this quiet room. Is it a mere psychological echo? A coincidence? No. In Adesewa's world, coincidences are just clues that haven't been decrypted yet. Later that afternoon, Adesewa returns to her private high-security office in the Gangnam district. The room is sleek, minimal, filled with monitors displaying real-time market data, satellite feeds, and legal dossiers. Her chief intelligence strategist, a sharp, quiet man named Marcus, approaches her with a grave expression. "We have a breach," Marcus reports, his voice low. Adesewa doesn't flinch. She takes off her coat. "Explain." 3 hours ago, someone bypassed our physical security protocols at the secondary archive facility, Marcus says, pulling up security footage on a nearby monitor. "They didn't touch the server racks. They didn't steal any gold, cash, or crypto hardware." Adesewa steps closer to the screen. "What did they take?" Marcus hits play. The black and white video shows a shadow moving with professional precision through the archive racks. The intruder stops at box number 409, the physical evidence folder from the 2019 Namhan Bridge investigation. The intruder opens the box, ignores the technical blueprints, ignores the financial spreadsheets, and pulls out a single, yellowed photograph. Adesewa's eyes narrow. "The photograph of the site inspection." "Yes," Marcus replies. "The one taken 48 hours before the bridge collapsed. The picture showing Chairman Minyi standing alongside his chief engineer and a young boy." Why that photograph? Of all the explosive evidence stored in that vault, documents that could send dozens of corporate executives to prison for life, why would a high-level industrial spy risk everything just to steal a 30-year-old photograph? Adesewa walks over to her wall-sized pinboard. She looks at the web of connections she has built over 7 agonizing years. Lines connect corporate subsidiaries, political donors, shell companies, and legal firms. But now, new threads are forcing their way into her design. A blind pianist who plays her father's forgotten lullaby, a young orphan girl who draws collapsing bridges in her sleep, and an intruder who steals a photograph of a boy standing next to a monster. She reaches up and touches her left temple. The pieces are moving faster than she calculated. The trap she laid for Chairman Minyi is working, but someone else is moving on the chessboard, someone operating from the shadows, playing a far more dangerous game. "Find out who cleared the security access for that archive facility," Adesewa orders Marcus, her voice hard as marble. "They think they are hunting me. Let them come closer. It makes them easier to strike." She turns away from the monitors and looks out at the glowing city lights. Seoul sparkles like a diamond in the dark, brilliant and cold. Somewhere out there, Chairman Minyi is searching for his invisible enemy. Somewhere out there, Noel is playing his piano. And somewhere in the dark, the truth is waiting to be uncovered, piece by painful piece. The rain falls soft and steady over the city, turning the neon lights of the Hongdae district into blurred smudges of red, gold, and blue. Inside a quiet, wooden-accented tea house, the atmosphere is calm, scented with dried jasmine and cedar. Noel sits at his usual table in the corner, his long fingers wrapped around a ceramic cup of warm tea. Beside him, leaning against the table, is his sleek white cane. The door chimes. Footsteps approach, click. Tap. Click. Tap. Noel's lips curve into a gentle, knowing smile before the visitor even takes a seat. "You didn't wear your perfume today," he says softly, tilting his head toward her. "Just the scent of damp wool and rain, but your stride. I would recognize it in a crowded stadium." Adesewa sits across from him. She slips off her wet trench coat, placing it over the back of the wooden chair. She wears her signature emerald gloves, the rich fabric stark against the plain wooden table. "You have an uncanny memory, Noel," she says, her tone neutral, guarded, yet undeniable in its warmth. When you cannot see, memory isn't just a drawer where you store old things, Noel replies, taking a sip of his tea. It is your entire map. Every sound, every frequency leaves a permanent mark. He pauses, setting his cup down carefully. You sound tired today, Adesewa. Your breath is shallow, your pulse. I can hear it in the side of your neck. It's racing. Adesewa instinctively reaches up, her gloved hand resting against her collarbone. She stares at the young blind man across from her. It amazes her how easily he reads her physical state without ever laying eyes on her face. It's just work, she lies smoothly. Complex investments. Investments, Noel repeats gently, a hint of playful skepticism in his voice. He places his hands flat on the table. Slowly, without warning, he begins to hum a melody. It is a quiet, sweeping tune, melancholic, sweet, carrying the mournful cadence of an old sea song. Adesewa's entire body freezes. Her heart stops. The room around her seems to dissolve into complete silence. The noise of the rain outside vanishes. The sound of clattering teacups disappears. All that exists is that simple, 8-note melody floating through the air. Her breath hitches in her throat. Her gloved fingers grip the edge of the wooden table so tightly the wood groans under the pressure. Where did you learn that melody? Adesewa asks. Her voice is barely a whisper, thick with sudden, overwhelming emotion. Noel stops humming. He looks surprised by her reaction. It's an old tune, he says softly. My mother used to hum it to me when I was a little boy, right before I lost my sight. She said it was a lullaby written by a structural engineer from West Africa who worked on major regional projects decades ago. She told me it was a song about building things that last forever. Adesewa's eyes brim with tears, though she refuses to let them fall. That lullaby was composed by her late father, Samuel, when he was working as a lead consultant in East Asia 30 years ago. He sang it to her every single night when she was a child in Lagos. It was a private family song, never published, never recorded, never shared with the world. How could a blind Korean pianist in Seoul know a private lullaby written by an African engineer 3 decades ago? What was your mother's name, Noel? Adesewa asks, her chest aching with an unbearable mixture of hope and terror. Before Noel can answer, his personal phone on the table vibrates vigorously. The harsh electronic buzz shatters the delicate atmosphere between them. Noel reaches for it, pressing the receiver to his ear. Hello, yes, this is Noel. He listens for a moment, his expressive face suddenly turning pale. When did this happen? Adesewa watches him closely. What is it? Noel lowers the phone, his hand shaking slightly. The orphanage, St. Teresa's. The city authorities just issued an immediate eviction notice. They say the land was acquired by a major commercial developer. Heavy machinery is already moving in to demolish the main building tomorrow morning. Adesewa's eyes turn to ice. Which developer? A subsidiary of Hansung Group, Noel says, his voice laced with helplessness. They are clearing the entire block. Adesewa stands up slowly. The vulnerability that filled her eyes moments ago vanishes completely, replaced by an iron resolve. Chairman Kang Min-yi is striking back. He doesn't know who she is yet, but he is bulldozing everything in his path to regain control of his real estate portfolio. He is trying to flush out his enemy by creating chaos. They won't touch that orphanage, Adesewa says, her voice echoing with dangerous authority. Adesewa, it's a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, Noel says, reaching out toward the sound of her voice, his hand catching only empty air. You can't stop a corporate demolition order in 12 hours. Adesewa doesn't look back as she grabs her coat. Watch me! An hour later, inside the smoke-filled, high-ceilinged boardroom of Hansung Group, Chairman Kang Min-yi sits at the head of the table. Surrounding him are his top legal counsel, media strategists, and police liaisons. On the wall behind him, televised news broadcasts display headlines accusing AETHEL Holdings of fraudulent market manipulation and foreign economic sabotage. Min-yi leans back in his leather chair, a ruthless, satisfied smile playing across his lips. Let them try to execute trade orders now, he chuckles to his vice president. We have frozen their domestic liquidity accounts. We have launched criminal investigations into their shell companies. By tomorrow morning, this mysterious investor will be financially bankrupt and publicly ruined. Executives in the room laugh, nodding in sycophantic approval. They believe the war is over. They believe the giant has crushed the mosquito. In her command center, Adesewa watches the news broadcast on 3 separate screens. Marcus stands behind her, holding a tablet loaded with red alert notifications. Our main operating accounts in Seoul have been temporarily frozen by the Regulatory Commission, Marcus warns, his voice tight. If we don't post bail capital within 6 hours, the holding company will default, and Hansung will initiate a forced buyback of all 17 subsidiaries. Marcus looks at her, genuine panic in his eyes. Adesewa, we've lost our leverage. Everything you built for 7 years is collapsing right now. Adesewa slowly turns around. She looks at the red numbers flashing on the screens. She looks at the televised face of Chairman Kang Min-yi triumphantly declaring victory at a press conference. And then, Adesewa smiles. It isn't a smile of resignation. It isn't a smile of defeat. It is the terrifying, beautiful smile of a grandmaster who has just led her opponent directly into a lethal, irreversible trap. They think they attacked my foundation, Adesewa says softly, her eyes gleaming with cold, brilliant fire. They have no idea I laid those tracks myself. Marcus stares at Adesewa in total disbelief. What do you mean you laid those tracks yourself? He asks, his voice cracking slightly under the immense pressure. Adesewa, if those accounts remain frozen for another 4 hours, Hansung's legal team will execute a forced liquidation clause. We lose the entire stake. Adesewa calmly walks over to her desk, picking up a sleek silver flash drive. She twirls it between her gloved fingers. Why do you think I consolidated our primary acquisition capital into those specific domestic accounts, Marcus? Did you really think I was careless enough to leave $4 billion vulnerable to a standard regulatory freeze? Marcus blinks, realization slowly beginning to dawn on him. You wanted them to freeze those accounts. I needed them to freeze those accounts, Adesewa corrects him, her voice dripping with sharp, strategic brilliance. The moment Chairman Min-yi used his political connections to force the Financial Regulatory Commission into issuing an emergency freeze order, he had to use his private, encrypted administrative credentials. He had to sign the order himself to bypass standard judicial review. She steps up to the primary central server terminal and inserts the silver flash drive. Instantly, the wall of monitors transforms. The red stock tickers vanish, replaced by thousands of cascading lines of green digital code. A massive, interconnected network map expands across the screen, highlighting hundreds of hidden offshore bank accounts, illegal political slush funds, and secret transaction logs stretching back over 15 years. The freeze order was a Trojan horse, Adesewa explains calmly, watching the data stream down. The instant his digital signature touched our account network, my custom decryption script inverted the connection. It traced his authorization key back through the government servers, straight into Hansung's hidden central ledger. Marcus's jaw drops as he watches the screen. My God, you didn't just defend our position. You just uncovered their entire off-books financial architecture. Every bribe paid to bridge inspectors, Adesewa says, her voice hardening with every word. Every offshore transfer to foreign shell accounts. Every single payment made to keep the Namhan Bridge disaster buried. It's all right here. Signed, time-stamped, and verified by Kang Min-yi's own digital signature. A wave of pure adrenaline surges through the room. The trap was never about holding stock. The trap was about forcing the monster to expose his own neck while trying to deliver a killing blow. Phase 2, Adesewa commands. Release the decrypted ledger fragments to the International Financial Oversight Committee and the Special Prosecutor's Office. Do it now. Understood. Marcus types frantically on his keyboard. Within 20 minutes, the entire financial landscape of South Korea shifts violently on its axis. News stations cut their scheduled broadcasts. Emergency banners flash across every screen in the nation. The Government Regulatory Commission drops all charges against AETHEL HOLDINGS. Instead, special federal agents storm the headquarters of 3 major banks associated with Hansung Group, serving immediate search warrants and freezing Chairman Min-yi's personal assets. Inside the executive boardroom at Hansung, the atmosphere of celebration dies instantly. Min-yi stands motionless in front of the television screen, his face drained of all color. The glass of scotch slips from his numb fingers, crashing onto the hardwood floor and shattering into 100 pieces. How? He stammers, his voice barely an audible croak. How did they get into our private servers? Who is behind this? His chief legal advisor stumbles into the room, gasping for breath, holding a tablet. "Sir, the freeze order. It was tapped. They used our own emergency authorization to drain our legal immunity reserves, the prosecutors. They are on their way here right now." Minyi grips the edge of the mahogany table, his chest heaving. For the first time in 7 years, absolute, agonizing fear grips his heart. He realizes he isn't fighting a corporate rival. He isn't fighting a hostile hedge fund. He is fighting an apex predator who knows every dark secret he has ever hidden. "Find out who owns AETHEL," Minyi roars, his eyes bloodshot with rage and terror. "I don't care how much money it costs. I don't care whose arms you have to break. Bring me a name." While the city explodes in financial chaos, Adesewa sits quietly in the back of a black luxury sedan parked 2 blocks away from the Hansung headquarters. Rain sweeps across the windshield in heavy sheets. She reaches down and slowly unbuttons her emerald glove, exposing her scarred wrist to the dim light of the vehicle's interior. Her mind drifts back through time, tearing through 7 years of agonizing, bloody memories. Flashback, 7 years ago. The darkness inside that buried mahogany casket was absolute. Cold, suffocating, crushing darkness. The air was thick, heavy with the terrifying scent of fresh dirt and raw silk. Adesewa's lungs burned as she clawed violently at the wooden lid above her, her fingernails snapping one by one, blood trickling down her hands. "Help me!" she had screamed until her throat bled. "Somebody help me!" Above ground, the heavy machinery had rumbled away into the night. Silence had fallen over the muddy wasteland then. A sound, not the roar of an engine, not the cold voice of Chairman Minyi, a scraping sound, metal striking dirt, shovel after shovel, frantic, desperate, sweating, a terrified young Korean construction worker, a boy no older than 20, wearing a dirt-stained yellow hard hat, was digging like a madman under the pouring rain. He didn't care about the corporate orders. He didn't care about the money he was paid to stay quiet. He had heard her scream before the dirt covered the box, and his conscience refused to let him become a murderer. For 3 agonizing hours, the boy dug through the heavy mud until his hands bled. He smashed the lock with an iron crowbar and forced the lid open. Adesewa gasped, sucking cold, wet air into her starving lungs, coughing violently as the rain splashed against her dirt-stained face. The boy pulled her out of the pit, weeping with terror. "You must run," the young worker had sobbed, wrapping his heavy jacket around her trembling shoulders. "If Chairman Minyi finds out you are alive, he will kill you and everyone you love. Run, leave Korea, never come back." That young construction worker saved her life. And then, he vanished into the night, disappearing from all public records without a trace. Present day, Adesewa pulls her emerald glove back over her wrist, her eyes cold and focused. She looks out the sedan window as dark clouds roll across the Seoul skyline. "I haven't forgotten you, young man," Adesewa whispers into the quiet interior of the car. "Wherever you are, I will find you, and I will pay my debt." She turns to Marcus, who sits in the front passenger seat. "Track down every employee who worked on the Namhan Bridge site shift on the night of November 14th, 2019. Cross-reference their social security numbers with residential utility records." "I'm already on it," Marcus replies. He pauses, looking back at her with a hesitate expression. "Adesewa, there's something else, something we didn't expect. Speak," she commands. "The little girl at the orphanage, Hana," Marcus says carefully. "We ran a secret DNA comparison using the hair sample you collected from her coat yesterday." Adesewa's heart stops beating. Her breath hitches. "And," Marcus turns around fully, holding out a confidential medical report. His voice trembles with profound weight. "Hana isn't an orphan, Adesewa. The genetic match is 99.9%. She's your biological daughter." The words echo inside the luxury sedan like a deafening thunderclap. "She is your biological daughter." Adesewa sits completely frozen. Her hands, encased in their emerald silk, begin to shake uncontrollably. The air in her lungs suddenly feels as thin and suffocating as it did inside that buried casket 7 years ago. Her eyes remain fixed on the paper in Marcus's hands, the stark black text of the genetic report burning into her brain 7 years ago, before the bridge collapsed, before the dirt fell. She was pregnant. She had been taken to a private medical facility under the pretext of an emergency health evaluation after the initial corporate threat. She was told she had suffered a traumatic miscarriage due to severe stress. They told her the baby was gone. It was all a lie. A monstrous, calculated, unspeakable lie. They kept her child. They waited until the baby was born, stripped the child of her identity, and dumped her at an obscure orphanage on the city's outskirts, leaving her to grow up without a mother, without a name, without ever knowing the blood that flowed through her veins. A drop of warm moisture falls onto Adesewa's gloved hand. She realizes with a shock that she is crying. Silent. Agonizing tears stream down her face, cutting through the cold armor she had built over 7 long years. Her daughter, the little girl who draws collapsing bridges in the dark, the little girl who hears the voices of monsters in her dreams. Adesewa, Marcus says gently, his voice filled with deep compassion. What do we do? Adesewa slowly closes her eyes. She takes a deep, ragged breath, forcing the overwhelming surge of grief and rage down into the deep, dark furnace of her soul. When she opens her eyes again, the tears are gone. Only pure, unadulterated steel remains. We protect her, Adesewa says, her voice low and dangerously precise. She must not know who I am yet, not until every single person involved in this atrocity is stripped of their power, their money, and their freedom. If Minyi discovers who Hana is, he will use her as leverage. We maintain absolute operational secrecy. If you were in Adesewa's place, would you reveal the truth now, or wait until the perfect moment? Let me know in the comments. She turns her head toward the window, watching the rain strike the glass. Keep double security on that orphanage around the clock. If anyone associated with Hansung steps within 500 meters of that child, erase them. Meanwhile, across the city, inside the heavily guarded private residence of Chairman Kang Minyi, the atmosphere is suffocating. Minyi sits behind a massive mahogany desk in his private study. His tie is loosened, his hair disheveled, his eyes bloodshot with exhaustion and fury. Standing in front of him is his chief intelligence operative, a shadowy figure known only as Director Park. Tell me you have something, Minyi growls, slamming his glass onto the desk. Tell me you found out who is pulling the strings of AETHEL Holdings. Director Park steps forward, placing a thick black leather folder on the desk. Sir, our agents managed to intercept an encrypted satellite signal originating from the primary shell, account's legal representative in Zurich. We decrypted the founder's original registration identity. Minyi snatches the folder, tearing it open with frantic hands. He flips through the pages until his eyes land on a high-resolution photograph attached to the legal dossier. It is a face he hasn't seen in 7 long years, a face he believed had rotted away beneath 3 meters of wet earth in a forgotten coastal field. Adesewa, Minyi's breath catches in his chest. His hands freeze. The blood drains from his face so completely that he looks like a corpse. His jaw hangs open, but no sound comes out. His heart hammers against his ribs like a trapped bird. Silence fills the room. A deep, terrifying, suffocating silence, not a shout, not a roar of anger. Just complete, absolute, paralyzing terror. Minyi stammers, his voice barely a thin, pathetic wheeze. She was buried. I saw the earth cover the box. I saw it with my own eyes. Director Park remains silent, bowing his head. Minyi stumbles backward out of his leather chair, knocking it over. He backs away until his spine hits the cold glass of the floor-to-ceiling window behind him. His eyes are wide, staring at the photograph as if it were a demon materialized from the depths of hell itself. The woman he murdered, the woman whose memory he erased, has returned from the grave, and she hasn't just returned. She has bought his companies. She has exposed his crimes. She is tearing his life apart piece by piece. She's alive, Minyi whispers, his chest heaving as panic takes complete control of his mind. She's alive, and she's coming for me. But then, in the middle of his overwhelming terror, Director Park speaks up again, his voice carrying a strange, unsettling tone. Chairman, there is one detail in the old archive file that does not make sense, Park says carefully. Minyi looks up, trembling. What are you talking about? Director Park opens a second, smaller folder. 7 years ago, on the night of the burial, the execution order was issued from your private satellite phone. But we just ran a deep forensic analysis on the historic cell tower logs from that night. Park looks directly into Minyi's eyes. Sir, your satellite phone was in Seoul that entire night. You never placed that call. Someone used an unauthorized clone of your private network key to order the execution. Minyi freezes. His mind spins in absolute confusion. What? What do you mean I didn't place the call? I was at the site. I was told she was being relocated. You were brought to the site after the box was already in the ground, sir, Park reveals softly. You were told she was executed on your orders, but you didn't give the command. Someone else forged your signature. Someone inside your inner circle wanted her dead, and wanted you to take the blame if it was ever uncovered. Minyi's mind shatters. The foundation of everything he believed for the last 7 years crumbles into dust. He thought he was the ruthless tyrant who eliminated a threat, but he wasn't the mastermind at all. He was a puppet, a pawn used by someone far more ruthless, far more cunning, far more sadistic than him, who could have forged his private key, who had the power, the access, and the absolute cruelty to bury an innocent woman alive and frame the chairman of Hansung Group for the crime. Subscribe if you love stories where every twist has been hiding in sight, because the biggest revelation is still ahead. The storm outside the window reaches its peak, lightning illuminating the darkened city, as the terrible truth begins to dawn on Minyi. The real monster isn't coming from the outside. The real monster has been sitting right beside him all along. The neon reflection of Seoul's skyline dances across the rainwater puddles outside the grand auditorium of the Uido Cultural Center. Inside, the atmosphere is electric. Hundreds of high society guests, corporate elites, foreign investors, and journalists fill the velvet-seated hall for the annual Korean Heritage Gala. In the green room behind the main stage, Noel sits at a polished vanity table. His hands are resting on his lap, his fingers flexed and ready. He wears a tailored black tuxedo, his dark sunglasses reflecting the bright vanity lights. Beside him stands his personal assistant, making final adjustments to his bow tie. 5 minutes to performance, Master Noel, the assistant whispers respectfully. Noel nods softly. Thank you. Is the special guest present in the box seat? The woman with the green gloves? The assistant checks through a gap in the heavy velvet curtain. Yes, she just arrived. She is sitting in the upper private box, perfectly positioned to hear every note. Noel's heart warms. A gentle smile spreads across his lips. He doesn't know why, but the presence of that mysterious woman gives his music a depth, a purpose he has never felt before. Meanwhile, in the private upper box overlooking the stage, Adesewa sits in the shadows. She wears a striking crimson silk gown that contrasts brilliantly with her signature emerald gloves. Beside her, Marcus monitors encrypted communications on a small, concealed tablet. The police forces are surrounding the building, Marcus whispers, leaning close to Adesewa. Chairman Minyi's private security team is also here. He knows you're in the building, Adesewa. He is frantic. Him be frantic, Adesewa says, her eyes fixed on the empty piano on the stage below. Fear makes powerful men stupid. Stated simply, he will make a mistake. Suddenly, the house lights dim. The murmur of the crowd fades into expectant silence. A single, brilliant spotlight illuminates the grand Steinway piano on the center of the stage. Noel walks out onto the stage, guided by his white cane. The audience applauds warmly. He bows politely, lowers his cane to the floor, and takes his seat at the piano bench. He pauses for a long, silent moment, closing his eyes, feeling the acoustics of the grand hall, feeling the subtle vibration of the hundreds of souls waiting in the dark. He lifts his hands. His fingers strike the keys. The melody begins. It is not a piece by Beethoven or Chopin. It is that same haunting, melancholic lullaby, the melody Adesewa's father composed 30 years ago. But tonight, Noel plays it with an overwhelming, transcendent passion. The notes roll through the hall like gentle waves, carrying an unbearable weight of love, loss, and longing. In her private box, Adesewa presses her gloved hand against her chest. Her breath catches. Tears well in her eyes once again. Every single note feels like a delicate string pulling directly at her heart, connecting her to her past, to her father, and to the innocent life she lost. Down in the audience, sitting in the front row, Chairman Kang Minyi stares up at the blind pianist. Minyi's face is drawn, pale, covered in a light sheen of sweat. He isn't listening to the beauty of the music. He is listening to the cadence of the melody. And suddenly, Minyi's eyes widen in horror. He recognizes that tune 30 years ago, during the construction of the first major regional bridge project. The lead foreign consultant, Samuel, used to hum that exact same tune every afternoon on the construction site. Minyi turns his head sharply, looking toward the far corner of the VIP section. Sitting in a wheelchair, surrounded by elite security guards and dressed in a regal dark purple silk suit, is an older woman with sharp, aristocratic features and cold, calculating eyes. She wears silver hair tied in a flawless, tight bun. Her face is completely unreadable, devoid of any warmth or human empathy. This is Chairwoman Yun Seorin, Min-yi's older sister. The true power behind the Hansung Group. The woman who built the financial infrastructure of the family empire while letting her younger brother act as the public face of the conglomerate. Min-yi stares at his older sister. He remembers 7 years ago. He remembers the night Adesewa was buried. He remembers who gave him the satellite phone. He remembers who handed him the glass of whiskey before he stepped out into the rain. It was her. It was always her. Seorin sits in her wheelchair, her icy eyes fixed on the blind pianist on stage. A faint, terrible, cruel smile touches the corners of her thin lips. At that exact moment on stage, Noel reaches the emotional climax of the lullaby. He strikes a powerful, resonant chord that vibrates through the floorboards. And as the note sustains, a sudden memory flashes through Noel's mind, a memory unlocked by the acoustics of the hall and the deep emotional connection to the music. He remembers being 7 years old. He remembers standing in the hallway of his childhood home. He remembers hearing a cold, sophisticated female voice speaking to his mother in the living room. "Your husband found out too much about the Steele reports," the cold female voice had said 7 years ago. "If you want your son to live to see his next birthday, you will hand over his research files and take the boy out of the country." Noel's fingers freeze on the piano keys. The sudden silence in the auditorium is terrifying. Noel turns his head toward the VIP box where Chairwoman Yun Seorin sits. Even without his sight, his incredible hearing locates the exact position of that cold, calculated breath he heard 14 years ago in his own living room. "You." Noel whispers into the silent, spotlighted hall, his voice picking up on the delicate stage microphone and echoing through the entire auditorium. "It was you," audience murmurs in total confusion. Corporate executives look around, bewildered. In her upper box, Adesewa stands up slowly. The final piece of the terrifying puzzle clicks into place with devastating clarity. The billionaire didn't order her death. His sister did. The blind pianist isn't a stranger. He is the son of Samuel's chief assistant engineer, the boy whose family was destroyed to keep the bridge secret buried forever, and the mastermind who orchestrates the entire empire of blood, is sitting right downstairs in a velvet wheelchair. Adesewa takes off her emerald gloves, dropping them onto the marble floor of the box. She doesn't need armor anymore. The time for corporate chess is over. The war for absolute retribution has just begun. The silence inside the grand auditorium is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Hundreds of wealthy elite guests sit frozen in their seats, staring at the stage where the young blind pianist, Noel, stands up from his piano bench, trembling with sudden, overwhelming realization. His microphone catches his ragged breathing, amplifying it across the high-ceilinged hall. Master Noel. His assistant steps out from the wings, confused and alarmed. "Are you all right?" Noel doesn't answer his assistant. His dark glasses are directed straight toward the VIP wheelchair section where Chairwoman Yun Seorin sits. "I remember your voice," Noel says, his voice carrying through the speakers, ringing with raw, agonizing truth. "You came to my home. You threatened my mother. You told her my father died in a car accident because he refused to sign the safety compliance papers for the Namhan Bridge." Gasps erupt across the audience. Reporters instinctively reach for their cameras, flashes beginning to pop like strobe light explosions in the dim hall. Chairwoman Yun Seorin doesn't flinch. Her expression remains as cold and smooth as carved marble. She slowly lifts one hand, signaling her head of security. "The young man is clearly suffering from a psychological breakdown," Seorin says calmly, her aristocratic voice echoing with effortless authority. "Escort him off the stage gently and call a medical team." 4 heavyset private security guards in black suits immediately move toward the stage steps. "Touch him," a powerful, command voice echoes from the upper balcony. Everyone in the auditorium turns their heads upward. Standing at the edge of the central VIP box, illuminated by the ambient glow of the hall lights, is Adesewa. She wears her crimson gown, her bare hands resting calmly on the brass railing. Her face is breathtakingly calm, her eyes radiating a lethal, undeniable brilliance. Chairman Kang Min-yi looks up from the front row, his jaw dropping in absolute terror. "Adesewa," he gasps, stumbling back against his seat. It's really her." The audience breaks into frantic whispers. "Who is that?" Is that the owner of AETHEL Holdings? What is going on? Adesewa doesn't look at the crowd. She looks down directly at Chairwoman Yun Seorin. 7 years ago, Chairwoman Seorin, Adesewa speaks softly, yet her voice carries through the silent auditorium with the force of a thunderclap. You ordered your men to seal me inside a wooden casket and cover it with 3 meters of wet mud. You thought 3 feet of dirt would hide the truth about the 300 lives lost on the Namhan suspension bridge. Seorin's sharp eyes narrow slightly, but she maintains her posture of supreme indifference. I have no idea who you are, young lady, Seorin replies smoothly. Security, clear the building. The gala is concluded. Not move. A booming voice echoes from the main entrance doors. The heavy oak doors of the auditorium burst open. Dozens of armed officers from the Metropolitan Police Department and special investigators from the Supreme Prosecutor's office flood into the hall, led by a stern, senior prosecutor holding a stack of federal warrants. Chairwoman Yun Seorin. Chairman Kang Min-yi, the lead prosecutor announces loudly, his voice echoing across the auditorium. By order of the High Court of South Korea, you are both placed under immediate arrest for corporate fraud. Mass manslaughter, structural murder, and systemic corruption. Panic erupts inside the hall. Wealthy socialites scramble for the exits. News cameramen push forward, flashes blinding the room as reporters scream questions into their microphones. Min-yi drops to his knees right there in the aisle, completely broken, weeping like a terrified child. He looks up at his older sister, his voice cracked with betrayal. You did this to us. You destroyed our family. Seorin doesn't even look at her kneeling brother. She looks up at Adesewa standing high above her on the balcony. For the first time, a sliver of genuine, icy hatred flashes in Seorin's dark eyes. You think you've won, girl? Seorin whispers, her voice smooth and venomous. You have paper documents, you have financial numbers, but you don't have the physical evidence from the collapse. The steel samples were destroyed 7 years ago. Adesewa smiles down at her, a slow, triumphant, breathtaking smile. Steel samples were not destroyed, Chairwoman, Adesewa says softly. She raises her hand and points toward the back of the auditorium stage. The heavy velvet curtains behind the grand piano slowly part. Stepping out from the shadows into the bright spotlight is a 30-year-old man dressed in a simple, clean suit. He walks with a slight limp, his face weathered, but his posture straight and proud. In his hands, he carries a heavy, rusted iron box sealed with a heavy brass padlock. Chairman Min-yi looks up from the floor, his eyes widening in shock. The construction worker. It is the young man who dug Adesewa out of the dirt 7 years ago, the worker who vanished into the night. His name is Minwoo, Adesewa announces to the entire hall and the national news cameras broadcasting live across the country. On the night the bridge collapsed, Minwoo extracted core steel samples directly from the main fracture point. He sealed them in an airtight industrial vault and went into hiding, waiting for the day someone would be strong enough to stand against the Hansung group. Minwoo steps to the front of the stage, setting the heavy rusted box onto the podium in front of the prosecutor. The original lab test seals are intact, Minwoo says clearly into the microphone. Signed by lead consultant Samuel 30 years ago, and verified by Adesewa 7 years ago. The steel used was 30% below structural safety threshold. It was paid for as premium grade A steel, while $60 million in price difference was routed directly into Chairwoman Seorin's private offshore accounts in Panama. The entire room goes deadly quiet. The proof is absolute, unassailable, complete. Chairwoman Yun Seorin's cold composure finally shatters. Her hands tremble on the armrests of her wheelchair. The empire she spent 40 years building out of blood, lies, and stolen lives has collapsed into dust in less than 10 minutes. The special prosecutors step forward, placing iron handcuffs over Seorin's frail wrists. They lift her from her wheelchair, escorting her down the central aisle alongside her sobbing brother, surrounded by a blinding storm of camera flashes. As Seorin is led past the stage, she glances up at Adesewa one last time. Adesewa simply looks back at her, calm, dignified, and totally unshakable. She doesn't scream. She doesn't boast. She simply watches the monsters who tried to bury her be carried away into the dark. Justice has not just been served. It has been executed with absolute mathematical precision. The morning sun rises over the East Sea, casting a brilliant, warm golden glow across the newly reconstructed Namhan Memorial Park. The air is fresh, carrying the clean, crisp scent of saltwater and wild blossoms. The towering steel spans of the brand-new, state-of-the-art suspension bridge shine in the sunlight, built with reinforced grade-A titanium steel, a symbol of unyielding strength, safety, and absolute integrity. Along the pedestrian walkway of the bridge, hundreds of citizens, families, and local children gather, laughing and tossing white flowers into the gentle azure waves below. A long marble memorial wall stretches across the entrance, engraved with the names of all 300 souls lost in the tragedy 7 years ago, alongside the honored name of lead foreign consultant Samuel. Near the center of the park, sitting on a wooden bench beneath the shade of a flowering cherry blossom tree, sits Noel. He wears a comfortable gray sweater, his hands resting gently on his white cane. He isn't playing the piano today. He is simply listening to the laughter of children, the soft rustle of spring leaves, and the steady, rhythmic roar of the ocean below. Footsteps approach along the gravel path. Click, tap, click, tap. Noel's face lights up with a soft, beautiful smile. "You walk differently today, Adesewa," he says gently as she approaches. "The heavy storm inside your stride, it's gone. The ground beneath you isn't falling apart anymore." Adesewa sits beside him on the bench. She wears a simple, elegant white linen dress. Her hands lie soft and bare in her lap. The emerald gloves are gone, leaving her scarred wrists exposed to the warm spring sunlight, unashamed, unhidden, completely healed. "It feels strange," Adesewa admits softly, looking out at the glittering sea. "For 7 years, every breath I took was calculated for retribution. I thought that once the empire fell, once the monsters were in prison, I would feel a great emptiness. Do you?" Noel asks, tilting his head toward her. "No," she whispers, a gentle tear of quiet joy sliding down her cheek. "I feel peace." A tiny pair of running footsteps sound along the gravel path. "Mama, look what I drew." A little 7-year-old girl comes running up the path, her laughter ringing like a clear bell through the morning air. It is Hana. Her cheeks are rosy with health, her left eye bright, her arms clutching a large, colorful drawing pad. Adesewa turns toward her daughter, her heart overflowing with an agonizingly sweet warmth. She opens her arms wide. Hana leaps into Adesewa's embrace, burying her face in her mother's neck. Adesewa pulls her close, pressing a tender, lingering kiss into the child's soft hair, holding her child for all the lost years they were kept apart. "What did you draw today, my angel?" Adesewa asks softly, wiping her tears away. Hana holds up the drawing pad with a proud, radiant smile. "It isn't a drawing of a collapsing bridge. It isn't a drawing of dark waters or fracture lines. It is a beautiful, bright picture of a wide, unbreakable bridge spanning across a rainbow ocean. On top of the bridge stand 3 figures holding hands, a little girl, a gentle man sitting at a piano, and a beautiful mother wearing a white dress under the sun." Noel reaches out his hand gently. Hana takes his fingers, guiding his hand across the textured paper so he can feel the raised lines of her drawing. "It's us," Hana says proudly, her voice filled with pure, innocent delight. "We're crossing the bridge together." Noel smiles, his eyes misting with emotion as he gently pats the child's head. "It is the most beautiful bridge in the world, Hana." Adesewa looks down at her daughter, then over at Noel, and finally up at the grand steel spans rising into the endless blue sky. She reaches into her small canvas bag and pulls out a small, carved wooden box. Inside lie her old emerald gloves, the armor she wore through the darkest valley of her life. Slowly, gently, she closes the wooden box and sets it onto the green grass beneath the blooming cherry blossom tree. She no longer needs armor. She has built something far greater than corporate power, far greater than money, far greater than revenge. She has restored her family. She has honored her father. She has reclaimed her daughter. Some people spend their lives building massive towers that touch the sky, hopping to stand above the world in isolated grandeur. Others spend their lives becoming the bridge that helps total strangers cross out of the darkness and into the light. The storm is over. The dawn has arrived. And the bridge will stand forever. The autumn breeze carries a cool crispness across the grounds of the newly established Samuel Educational Foundation in downtown Seoul. Leaves of gold and amber drift slowly through the air, resting on the clean stone steps of the research center. Inside the grand library, sunlight pours through 2-story glass windows, illuminating rows of engineering textbooks, architectural models, and quiet reading spaces filled with young students from across the globe. Adesewa stands near the upper mezzanine, overlooking the bustling reading room below. She wears a tailored charcoal blazer over a silk blouse, her dark hair pinned back gracefully. Her wrists are bare, displaying her faint scars openly in the clear autumn light without shame or hesitation. Beside her, Marcus reviews a stack of annual operational reports on an electronic tablet. The scholarship program for underprivileged engineering students has received over 4,000 applications this semester alone, Marcus reports, his tone filled with genuine professional satisfaction. The legal division has also completely finalized the transfer of all seized assets from the former Hansung subsidiaries into the Public Infrastructure Trust Fund. Adesewa nods slowly, her gaze lingering on a group of young women gathered around a table studying suspension bridge stress vectors. And the legal proceedings regarding the former executives. Chairman Kang Min-yee's defense team attempted to file for medical leniency last week, Marcus replies, adjusting his glasses. High Court rejected the petition instantly. His 15-year sentence for corporate negligence and financial obstruction remains fully enforced. As for Chairwoman Yoon Seorin, her asset forfeiture appeal was dismissed yesterday. She will spend the remainder of her life inside the high-security correctional facility in Daejeon. Adesewa takes a quiet breath, feeling neither joy nor sorrow at the news. The era of retribution has closed completely, leaving behind only the solid ground of accountability. Ensure the Family Support Fund for the 300 Namhan victims receives its quarterly disbursement on schedule, she instructs gently. Every child of every victim must have their education fully funded through university. It is already processed, Marcus assures her with a respectful bow. Everything is running smoothly, Adesewa. Downstairs, the heavy oak entrance doors swing open. The sound of cheerful laughter echoes through the high-ceilinged atrium. Hana comes running inside, wearing her yellow school uniform and holding a shiny brass medal around her neck. She bounds up the mezzanine stairs 2 at a time, her long dark pigtails bouncing with every step. Look, Hana cries out, holding up the gleaming medal proudly. I won first place in the regional mathematics competition. Adesewa kneels down on the carpeted floor, catching her daughter in a warm, loving embrace. I knew you would, my clever girl, Adesewa whispers, pressing a kiss against Hana's forehead. First place out of how many schools? 52, Hana beams, her small face radiant with pride and joy. And Uncle Noel said if I won, he would teach me how to play the middle harmony of Grandpa's song on the grand piano. Standing near the top of the stairs, guided by his white cane and accompanied by his assistant, Noel smiles warmly toward the sound of their voices. He steps forward with comfortable familiarity, his ears tuned perfectly to the joy reverberating through the hall. A promise is a promise, little mathematician, Noel says warmly, leaning on his cane. The piano in the main auditorium is freshly tuned and waiting. Adesewa stands up, taking Hana's small hand in hers while Noel walks beside them toward the concert hall. As they walk down the sunlit corridor, Adesewa looks at the framed photograph hanging on the central memorial wall, a restored portrait of her late father, Samuel, standing proudly beside his early bridge designs 30 years ago. We did it, Father, she thinks quietly, her heart filled with profound serenity. Your name is honored, your song is alive, and your granddaughter is safe. They enter the grand auditorium, where the sunlight streams down through the skylights, illuminating the polished black grand piano sitting gracefully on the stage. Hana rushes ahead, pulling open the piano bench with eager excitement, while Noel takes his seat beside her, placing his slender hands over the ivory keys. Adesewa sits in the front row, watching her daughter's eyes light up as Noel begins to guide her small fingers across the keys, teaching her the timeless melody that survived the darkest night of their lives. The music fills the hall, not as a cry for justice, but as a celebration of eternal life, love, and hope. The evening sky shifts into vibrant hues of deep violet and burnt orange as dusk falls over the Seoul peninsula. Lights along the coastal highway flicker on one by one, tracing the winding outline of the shoreline like a glowing necklace of diamonds. Traffic moves smoothly across the majestic Namhan suspension bridge, its massive steel towers standing strong and silent against the rising tide. Inside the private residential quarter of the foundation overlooking the bay, a quiet family dinner has just concluded. The aroma of roasted tea, grilled fish, and steamed rice lingers comfortably in the warm air. In the cozy living room, warm lamplight glows against rich hardwood floors and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. Hana lies on a thick Persian rug near the fireplace, fast asleep, her math medal still pinned proudly to her sweater, her breath steady and peaceful. Adesewa steps softly across the room, pulling a soft wool blanket over her sleeping daughter's shoulders. She lingers for a moment, gently brushing a stray lock of hair from Hana's forehead, her heart filled with endless gratitude. Near the balcony glass, Noel stands quietly, holding a warm cup of herbal tea, listening to the distant, rhythmic crash of the ocean waves against the reinforced sea wall below. Sea sounds gentle tonight, Noel observes softly as Adesewa approaches, her quiet footsteps signaling her arrival. Usually, autumn tides bring heavy swells, but tonight the water sounds calm. The wind shifted to the south an hour ago, Adesewa says softly, leaning her side against the balcony doorframe, looking out at the glittering lights of the bridge in the distance. It's bringing warm air from the coast. Noel turns slightly toward her. Minwoo called me earlier today from the coastal maintenance facility, he mentions, a warm smile touching his lips. He said the structural monitoring sensors on the bridge registered 0 stress deviations during the peak evening traffic rush. He called it an engineering masterpiece. Woo takes great pride in his work, Adesewa smiles gently. He suffered so much in silence for 7 years. Seeing him stand tall as the chief structural inspector of the new bridge is one of the greatest blessings of this journey. What about you, Adesewa? Noel asks, his tone turning reflective, filled with deep, unspoken care. What comes next for the woman who conquered an empire and rebuilt her world from the dirt? Adesewa looks out at the endless dark horizon, where the ocean meets the starry sky. She thinks about the long, painful path that brought her to this moment, the darkness of the mahogany casket, the suffocating weight of the mud, the lonely years of planning in distant cities, the corporate warfare, and the terrifying secrets that almost destroyed everything she loved. 7 years, I thought my life was defined by the hole they dug for me, Adesewa says slowly, her voice clear, resonant, and deeply human. I believed my purpose was to tear down what was built on lies, but now, looking at Hana asleep by the fire, listening to you play that melody, watching strangers cross that bridge safely every single night, I realized that survival was only the beginning. She turns toward Noel, reaching out her hand to gently touch his shoulder in warm, unshakable friendship. My purpose isn't to tear down monsters anymore. My purpose is to build things that protect people from the cold. Noel nods slowly, his heart deeply touched by her words. A true builder, he whispers gently, just like your father. Outside on the balcony, a gentle night breeze blows, rustling the leaves of the cherry blossom trees in the courtyard below. The moonlight shines down upon the new bridge, its massive white cables shimmering brightly in the dark like strands of silver silk woven through the night air. Every life encounters a storm that threatens to bury it completely beneath the crushing weight of darkness and injustice. Some people allow the dirt to define them, remaining trapped in the shadows of what was done to them. But others realize that the dirt is not a grave. It is merely the soil in which the strongest seeds take root, and when those seeds break through the surface, they don't just survive the storm. They become the shelter that changes the world forever.